Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Livin The Dream video and audio podcast. My name is Rishi Barran, and I'm a course director at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting at Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. The whole idea of this show is to highlight our graduates and the success that they have had since moving on and entering the business. And, normally when you see me in this, I'm wearing like a nice shirt and everything, but I decided to dress down today because my main man, Carson Ferrell, is with us, and he's a big Tampa Bay Lightning fan. They've won 2 Stanley Cups. So I said, Carson, I'll dress down for you. He's a pretty casual guy. He used to wear jerseys and all that kind of stuff on campus, but very happy to have ESPN's Carson Ferrell with us. Carson, how is life in Bristol?
A lot colder than Winter Park in Tampa, Florida. I can tell you that much. But you're fitting the part. I don't know how many people you have on your podcast that are on-cam personalities, but now you're dressed like a behind-the-scenes guy. Now you're dressed like I am when I go to work. Although I try to button it up every now and then. And by button it up, I mean like flannels to fit the northern weather I am up here. But a great attire there, back to back, baby. What can we say?
That's awesome. And I love how you set up for us. He's about to move, and yet he still has a great background. He looks like he's in a locker room. I see Victor Hedman, and I see Vasilevsky, and I see Franco, and all those Tampa Bay legends. We'll get to the baseball thing a little later, Carson. You know where I'm going with that. But let's start with you. You are actually our first guest who has worked at ESPN, and you and Clay Schrager both started there. You were our first 2 graduates to start at ESPN, and you've been living the dream now for a couple of years. You've even gotten a promotion. We'll get there a little later, but I want to take it back to the beginning. Where did the dream start for you in terms of wanting to do this for a living?
I would say I kind of took a flyer one time, going into my freshman year of high school at Winter Haven High School. I heard about the TV production program there, and I just kind of thought it would be interesting. I didn't really have any electives that I really looked forward to going into high school. I was kind of like the quiet kid who would just sit there and play bass, and there wasn't an elective on heavy metal music. So I would just decided I would work in TV instead. And I did that through my 4 years of high school. It was a great program. It was an award-winning high school program. During my time there, I would go out, I would film sports. I would be on cam, which, was one of my favorite things to do. And I really just got the whole well-rounded verse of making student television. And at the end of the day, I kind of look forward to it every morning, going into school to spend half my day doing TV production. By the time my senior year came, that's where I was pretty much every day, just working on making projects and kind of, getting a feel for things. I didn't think it would lead to a career when I first signed up, but here I am.
That's such a cool thing. And you said it was an award-winning program. You went out and you shot stuff. What were some of the principles you learned all the way back then that got you going to where you are now?
The biggest thing was just the technology we had. The school was nice enough to, fund the program with some really nice cameras. Looking back, I can't name them anymore because I personally don't work with cameras anymore. We had a lot of Apple programs using Final Cut Pro, which was, at the time for a 14-year-old in high school, a pretty big software to get a hold of and to have to learn, but it caught on pretty quick. Just the award-winning program that we had, we were best in show in Polk County, which was, all the schools, we would come together to do an award show, and we would present projects like documentaries, music videos, storytelling, and, anything in TV that you can think of, we would have to make a project for and submit as a class. And then shooting at our sporting events, I would go, to the football games, to the baseball games. And just as a fan of sports, I was happy to do them because it was fun for me to go out and feel like I was doing what I always wanted to do. I loved NFL Network. I watched it all the time growing up. So I would go and shoot those football games as if I was working for NFL Films and try and get, some great shots, different angles that not everybody was thinking of, and just try and make the best video that I could demonstrate to the students at the time.
I'm sure Charlie Tate appreciated that. Was he the coach there at the time?
He was. Yep. Coach Tate. I don't know if he's still there anymore, but he was there for my entire 4-year span.
Yeah, I covered Coach Tate when I was working at Bright House Sports Network and Spectrum Sports in the Tampa Bay and Central Florida area. And he was one of my favorites. He was good for a one-liner. I remember I forget who they were playing, but it was another team in the region. I don't know if it was Lakeland or who it was, George Jenkins, who it was. But I remember we asked him about the connection between his players and the players on that team. And he said, we share the same mall. And we thought that was such a great line. We brought that up in the broadcast. But you're in good hands over there. And you mentioned playing the bass. You were I almost called you a magician. You were a musician at one point. When did the dream kind of shift from I want to play music to, man, this TV thing actually could be a pretty good future for me?
It's funny you say magician because my dad will always call me a musician on base because I'm apparently pretty good. I don't think so, but as a dad, he's a good parent there that tells me that I'm pretty good. I don't know. At some point, I think reality hit. I was playing shows. I had fun doing it through high school. I still play to this day. But at some point, there was like, maybe I'm not going to be the next bass player for Iron Maiden, and maybe I need to start looking at a possible full-time career. And that's when that happened, that realization while I was in school at Winter Haven, doing TV production. I was like, maybe I can make something out of this. And at the time, I thought maybe I would get into the journalism side of things and doing, more reporting. And then it kind of just was a matter of sitting in purgatory. I went to UCF for a little bit, had to drop out because of financial reasons there, just couldn't make it through. And then I went back to, slinging pizzas for a while. But while I was doing that, I was doing freelance work, writing for a Cleveland Indians blog, I guess. And I did that for about 2 years. And while I was doing that writing, I got into Full Sail. I found out about that. And it just kind of transitioned from writing blogs to learning about production at Full Sail. Taking that first class with Jeff Schetzel made me realize that I really liked the idea of producing and just the behind the scenes aspect of things, and the knowledge that I had from high school, it kind of like translated pretty well. And I met some good friends. I produced their podcast for a while, and that just kind of snowballed into where I am now.
That's awesome. Oh, I want to get into Full Sail in a moment, but before we do that, you mentioned the Cleveland Indians, and I know you worked for Fansided and did some work for them, but I know that all kind of started in Winter Haven too. Your fandom of your former team now, who are also no longer the Indians, by the way. They are now the Cleveland Guardians, but Winter Haven was their home for spring training. And I know you were around it a lot. How did the spring training experience of your childhood influence your life?
Yeah, that was one of the two big things that got me into my love of sports, was being checked out of school every day, or not every day, but a couple times a week. Don't tell the teachers and principals that, to go to spring training games with my mom, who she was an avid sports fan too, so she's just taking her boys to go to see the baseball game and having fun with it. And that was just, for me, something that I fell in love with as a kid. I had a Grady Sizemore bobblehead, a Bob Feller bobblehead. I got to meet Bob Feller at the time. It was awesome for a kid like me. And then my neighbor across the street, when we moved to Florida, my family didn't know anything about hockey, but my neighbors across the street, they had a son that was my age. He was a hockey player, and they just got us into the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's how I found my other love. And this was 2004, so pretty good time to get into hockey when the Lightning won their first Stanley Cup. And as a kid, for me, it was just a cool experience to see and to learn and get to grow up playing hockey and playing T-ball. And I wasn't any good, but it was just fun. I hold a lot of love in my heart for those days. Still love Cleveland. It's a great city. And I still watch the Guardians and follow them. The name change for me, I support it because I understand why. It just feels like the different team, and they're not in Winter Haven anymore. We don't have to get into it. But yeah, it was just a big part of my childhood and what got me into sports. And, it got me a career. What can I say? I'm happy about it.
We're talking to Carson Ferrell. He is a graphics producer at ESPN, and that is actually his second job there. We will speak more about that in a little bit, but you did come to Full Sail. At a certain point, Carson, you had enough of Andy's milkshakes, which, by the way, I stop to get every time I drive through Winter Haven. And you decided to keep going down I-4 and take your trip to Full Sail University. You mentioned UCF and starting out there, but how did you decide that, you know what, I'm going to become one of the early members of the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting?
It really kind of happened on one of these weird coincidences where I didn't think it would happen, which seems to be a lot of my life now. I was on a trip to Houston with my mom and family. We were going to a Colts Texans game, and I was staying at my good friend's condo. And I'd wake up in the morning and I would watch the Dan Patrick Show and just kind of, that was my routine. I would wake up, have my coffee, watch the Dan Patrick Show, get ready for my day. And during the show, they played an ad for the school. And at the time, I knew my mom she wasn't very happy with me for dropping out and for slinging pizzas at Mellow Mushroom and kind of like accepting the fact that I would just be working in restaurants for my life. And I saw that ad for Full Sail and I told her, I think I want to do that. I want to give it a try. And that was in November of 2018, 2017. I don't know. The years have gone by so fast now. I think it was 2017, November. And then I started in April of 2018 at Full Sail. So it happened pretty quick. It was just a matter of signing up, leaving Mellow Mushroom, leaving Tampa where I was living at the time with my dad and just kind of like, hey, this is going to be my new life now. Like I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to finish. I'm going to graduate. And I want to make a career out of something that I really love. And it all happened so fast. I felt like in the blink of an eye, I was going from slinging pizzas to learning how to build rundowns.
You mentioned your mother's influence and her encouragement. How much did that mean to you at that point in your life that she was pushing you forward toward bigger goals for you?
It meant the world. I know she wasn't always happy with me working in restaurants. I personally wasn't happy. I met lifelong friends there and I still talk to those people and they're all very proud of me. And it's just a matter of, I don't know, just a mother always wants more for her son and she doesn't want to see him working at a dive bar in Winter Haven or at a pizza place in Clearwater. And she always knew I had this passion for sports that she kind of instilled in me. And the fact that she heard that I was going to go back to college and finish it, Full Sail is not a cheap school, but
yeah.
The fact that she was willing to help cooperate with me to get in there and like make my dreams come true was surreal. And the fact that she helped me get into Full Sail through all the obstacles and over the hurdles was kind of my inspiration to be like, all right, I'm here now. I'm going to make sure I'm doing this right and I finish it. And I would call her, Full Sail has the monthly program. I would call her after every month and tell her like, hey, I got an A in this class. I passed this class easily, flying colors, which, because of my determination at Full Sail and wanting to make her proud and wanting to get a career out of this, like I did really well on my Full Sail classes, and that was a huge part of it.
You mentioned earlier that something clicked for you in Jeff Schetzel's Intro to Sportscasting class. And Jeff Schetzel was the original instructor for Intro to Sportscasting. He now teaches BAT2 in our school. But a lot of people, Carson, when they first see a rundown, they're a little intimidated. They're not quite sure what to do. For you, it felt natural after being more of a print writer coming to our school. What did you like about it?
For me, there was no intimidation over a rundown because I'm a person who likes to have things organized, as much as it may be hard to believe with my beard and my rugged appearance. But I like to have things planned out. I plan ahead and make sure I get things done. So a rundown for me is like, oh, there's a game plan for this. Like we make this work, we live and die by it, we fix it when it needs to be fixed, and we adjust accordingly to things that happen on the fly. And to seeing that was just like, okay, this is how this works. And the class just kind of taught you the inner workings of live TV and how a place like ESPN operates. And thankfully, Jeff Schetzel, a former ESPN employee, it was there to teach me that because it transitioned pretty well for me when I started up here. And having those teachers that went to ESPN and teachers that have years of in the field experience and working with different productions, it made it a lot easier to adapt and to learn and see these things. And I can't really say if there's anything in particular that really clicked, but it was just every day looking forward to going into that class and like learning more about the production side of things. Meanwhile, I'm being forced to go on camera and do things on camera. And while I'm pretty comfortable with it, I didn't like it very much.
Welcome back to Talkin' Baseball, Full Sail Live's only baseball show, and that's because I demanded it.
So I just thought, hey, maybe there's something to this production thing.
We like to say that the intro class is basically boot camp to being a production assistant at ESPN because a lot of the concepts in the class are things that are used by production assistants at ESPN. How true is that now that you're actually working there?
110% true. When I came into ESPN as a production assistant and was training for my first week and a half, it just felt natural and so easy. The only difference was the software that we used was different than what we use at Full Sail. Everything else, I mean, just you name it, just having in pad time, in time, stop fulls, all the terminology that people don't really understand when you're talking about TV, but things that you just grasp when you learn about it. And these are things that I knew well ahead going into ESPN, and it just kind of worked out for me. Like I was working with people who didn't really know like the terminology or like things that they were working with, and for me it was just second nature to cut video to what I was writing to and to follow the rundown, to learn the storylines. I remember at one point I had to cut like a 20-second VO about the Hurricanes. Was it 2002 national championship team? I can't remember the exact year, but I just knew to Frank Gore was on that team. Greg Olson, I think there was a tight end. Can't remember, but just
I think Olson was on that team. Yeah.
Yeah, grabbing like key players, and the person that was training me was like, not only did you cut good players from that team, but like you managed to cut players who were successful in the NFL. And, like that was just kind of a natural thing because I knew who these guys were, and it just made sense. And it's all storytelling, and that was the story to tell about that team.
You had said that you came in and you just knew right away that you wanted to be behind the scenes. I would say the majority of the people that come to us, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I'd say at least 90%, they start with on-camera aspirations. How did identifying that behind the scenes was right for you help you as you went through the program as a student, because you knew that early on?
Oh, it was great. I think the fact that I was the first student who really wanted to be behind the scenes kind of, took some of the teachers by surprise, because they were able to kind of change the way they taught their course to somebody who wanted to do something different, which could be helpful to, other students that come in and want to do behind the scenes work, because they know how to gear their classes towards learning the type of things that you need to know for that. It was great because I had the understanding of the professors there at Full Sails that were able to guide me into what I wanted to do, while still, making me uncomfortable and shoving me in front of a camera every now and then. But that part of making me uncomfortable kind of worked in my favor, because I would, be in front of camera and then realize, like, if I'm on camera and I don't like these things that I'm hearing in my ear or things that I have to work with, then I know that while working behind the camera, the person I'm working with probably doesn't want to have those things happen to them. So it gave me a little bit of aspect on both sides of things, and I'm grateful for that because I think it's really helped me in my career.
We're talking to Carson Ferrell of ESPN. Carson, another thing that you were, I wouldn't say an originator of, maybe you were the first one. I don't know if anyone before you had gone through a lot of solo classes. That became something that you had to do at a certain point in the program. What were the benefits and maybe also kind of the negatives of going through certain classes just by yourself?
It was hard to make friends sometimes because I was by myself. I became good friends with the professors, so that helped out a good bit. The benefits were definitely having the one-on-one interaction. You're not going to get that when you're going to a big college. You're not really going to get that anywhere when you're taking classes. And if you are, you're usually paying a lot more money for it. And that just helped me because I was able to have the classes geared more towards what I wanted to do and to guide me in the right path of having success for my aspirations, as opposed to being guided towards, a curriculum that you had to follow. So while you did maintain a curriculum and make it work, it was helpful to have those classes geared towards me being on my own and really getting more one-on-one interaction and more helpful reviews and grades on the assignments that I had to do.
Yeah, I remember we did that in your last month before you graduated. I gave you the option. I still have the rubrics, by the way. I've only used them a couple of times, but because we haven't had too many situations where it's been just someone who wanted to produce. But we kind of gave you a chance to be the producer and get graded on being a producer those months. And then I also would say, instead of performing today, Carson, we're going to have you put together a 30-minute show. What did you take out of that specialized stuff that not only that I gave you, but others did?
4, 3, ready alpha, 2, roll alpha, track 1. Alpha, full, take.
It really helped me learn the production side of things better just by being put into those kind of random pressure situations. I mean, sometimes I would go into class expecting that, all right, I'm going to have to go on camera and follow the curriculum that I was given at the start of the course. And all of a sudden, no, you're making a 30-minute show. And that's kind of how life is at ESPN now. You know, things fluctuate all the time in TV, and you never really know what you're going to expect going into every day. And that still holds value to this day of learning different things that I really wasn't expecting. And, you know, I haven't been able to go out in the field and shoot as much as I did at Full Sail, thanks to COVID. But I've, you know, eased into a production role here pretty well because of the curveballs that were thrown at me at Full Sail. And I always say it's just a weird coincidence or a weird twist of fate that I end up in the positions that I am. But being in my own class and having those things geared towards me was one of those weird twists of fate that I don't think I would be where I am right now if I had that.
That being said, as you mentioned, you did go on camera a lot, which you said made you feel a little bit uncomfortable at times. That perspective, seeing what it's like to be the person performing, how did that help you as a producer now?
I mean, like I said, it was helpful to have that experience of being the person performing and knowing what I liked and I didn't like. I could thank Jordy Hershiser for that, for being the person screaming in my ear when I had to do on-cam stand-ups. And then I realized, like, oh, I really don't want a producer to be doing that to me unless I like desperately need to be screaming at them. So that gave me a nice aspect of things. And now at ESPN, like being a graphics producer, like I talk with talent. I'm like, hey, if you're gonna discuss this, then what should I put on my graphics to, you know, support your point or give you the evidence that you need to get your point across on the show? And they're very grateful for that. You know, it's not just them speaking into the abyss. You have, you know, numbers and graphics to kind of back up what you're saying. And so just that communication is a huge part of it. And it's a big level of what, like, especially at this level, a big part of the job that we do in order to make the product on TV a lot better.
You joked that it was hard to make friends in those one student classes, but I know you did make a lot of lifelong friends during your time at Full Sail. How did those relationships help you over the course of your time with us and beyond?
It honestly, it changed my life. And it was a big influence on how it was me getting through this, just having those friends that would back me up and, you know, support my idea of wanting to be a producer while they had on camera aspirations. I wouldn't have been able to make it through Full Sail without having those kinds of friends, just because, like, you know, you're having a bad day and you have somebody that's able to, you know, pick you up when you're down. And I can, you know, give all the love in the world to my buddy Chris Burns and, you know, Mike Warren, Adrian Donnelly, a lot of good friends that I made at Full Sail that I still keep in contact with and see to this day and support them through their aspirations. You know, I mentioned the podcast that I started with. That was a podcast I started with Chris Burns, and that's how we became such good friends. And, you know, he had his on-camera and talent aspirations where he would talk into the mic to our 2 listeners, and I would produce for those 2 listeners and try to make it a better product. And, you know, just having those people that I could network with and still keep in contact with this day, I think it's going to benefit me in the long run, benefit all of us. And at the end of the day, just that's what this job's about, is making new friends and like meeting new people in this world.
This is episode 10 of the Livin The Dream podcast. I'm Rishi Barran, wearing my gold bolt shirt. I don't wear this very often, Carson, just for you in boat parades, really, because I'm a Penguins fan.
We got some cups and some jerseys to go with you, so we'll make sure you're not hanging on your own. Even got the Stanley Cup towel.
Oh, wow, he's got it everywhere. It's just like you were a walking billboard for the Cleveland Indians when you were in our program.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, my favorite baseball team, and the reason is because Gordy Hershiser's brother Oral, I grew up watching him when he was with the Dodgers in his miraculous run in 1988. And then he signed with the Indians as a free agent. And I was like, I'm going with him. He's my favorite player. I'm going to be an Indians fan. So here we are now. I'm a Guardians fan and Carson's a Rays fan somehow, but that's all good. But back to the connections that you made. I always like to get behind the scenes stuff in these podcast interviews and kind of learn more about what life is actually like for you. You know, we get to see what we get to see, but what's life like behind the scenes as a Full Sail student in terms of just kind of trying to make it in a school that doesn't have the big name, you know, football and basketball teams and all that like a state college would? What's it like being a student in that type of a university?
Well, when you meet a lot of people up here and I tell them I went to Full Sail, I usually have to say, okay, do you know Gus Ramsey? He worked here for 20 plus years. Okay, then yeah, they kind of make the connection there at that point and realize that's where I came from. So a lot of times I'll be like, okay, I did 2 years at UCF and then went to Full Sail, just so they can kind of get a gist of the area that I was at. But it's definitely interesting. I mean, the friends that I made up here, people from Wisconsin and from big schools. I know when I interviewed up here, I interviewed with people who went to Northwestern and Georgia, and I somehow got picked out of that. And whenever I did get picked from that interview process, it kind of made me realize that this Full Sail thing might be legit, because they really know what they're talking about and what they're teaching. And it kind of worked out well in my interview process. And we did have an interview class there that kind of helped me get through that. Thank you, Mike Tuck. And that, it played a role into getting my job here. But as far as behind the scenes goes, I mean, what a roller coaster it is. It's a hectic day. There's a lot that goes into it. I can get into a lot more detail if I need to. But it goes from being a long day to the show is on, and this goes by really, really fast.
You mentioned that the interview process, you felt more prepared than the students at Georgia and Northwestern. What is it like going through the ESPN interview process? Can you take me through all the steps and what you had to do and the type of questions you had to answer?
Yeah, I don't know if I can reveal every detail. I don't know if there's some kind of disclosure agreement here, but I can definitely provide an example that really stood out to me. Was we had to sort of pick apart a highlight that we were going to put on SportsCenter that night. And it was from a Reds-Pirates game in the middle of the season. And this was the 2019 season. Both teams were horrible. And, there were a couple of home runs in the game, and there ended up being a brawl at the end of the game. Well, that brawl involved Yasiel Puig, who in the middle of the game was traded to Cleveland. So that was kind of the big storyline about that highlight. And I'm sitting with the people who I need to cut that highlight for. And we all have to work together as a group to kind of make this play in this highlight. And they're all talking about Josh Bell hits 2 home runs. Let's get that in there and get the leadoff home run from the Reds and all this stuff. I'm like, why don't we include a flashback to earlier in the season where they got into a brawl? And I think it was Pittsburgh at the time. And, let's start off with that. And then all of a sudden start off with a player getting hit by a pitch. And then it escalates into this whole brawl that involves Yasiel Puig coming onto the field and, swinging fists and everything. And meanwhile, I mentioned the fact that he got traded in the middle of the game and now might have to serve a suspension in his first game in Cleveland. And nobody else seemed to have that idea. I think a little bit of my baseball knowledge helped there, but it was also the idea of storytelling that Full Sail, beats into your brain that made it work out for me there. Because that was the story of that game, not Josh Bell hitting 2 home runs. No disrespect to Josh Bell.
That's awesome. And the interview process itself, is it high pressure? Do they put you in high stress situations where they want you to ask, answer tough questions? What's the interview like?
It was, it's probably changed now since COVID, but it was a 3-step process of step 1 was just a phone call that was out of the blue. Not to say anything, that I did, but I got the phone call on a Saturday morning after a nice Friday night, and had to basically tell the person who called me, like, hey, so like, what if you're producing SportsCenter tonight, what stories are you putting in there? And this was at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And I had at the top of my head just be like, rack my brain for the things that I would put in a SportsCenter rundown. And it was about a 10-minute phone call. I later got a follow-up interview on Skype that was much more planned for. And it was just a matter of, what if you're going to cut this highlight, how would you cut it down to 10 plays or cut it down to 5 plays or 3 plays? Just kind of throwing different situations at you. And then the last process was coming up here for an in-person interview, which was a full day in Bristol, which is beautiful in November when you have to come up here for an interview. So that helped play into me moving up here. And it was just, they took you around campus. They really asked you about what you would want to do while working at ESPN, where you see yourself long-term working with a company like ESPN, because it is a massive company and things are ever changing up here. And it's about adapting to change. And I think they heard my backstory and the change that I went through so rapidly, going from wanting to play music to restaurants to Full Sail and you name it. And it just kind of fit their personality.
And then you ended up there, and now you're taking some of the things you learned from Full Sail and applying them. So before we get to the next big question, besides the storytelling that you mentioned, what were some of the other things you learned from the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting that are most valuable to you to this day?
The biggest one is how to work with deadlines. Everybody at Dan Patrick School is very strict about their deadlines and enforcing them. And that holds true in TV. I mean, it's not like you're working on a week-long project. I mean, sometimes you get that and you're working on longer form projects, but in my role, every day is a deadline. Like, I come into work and the show needs to be ready by 3 o'clock. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job right. And I've, come to terms with working in those high pressure situations. I would help produce the student projects when I was at Full Sail, and that was a high pressure situation of working in live TV. And that's what I told them when I moved up here. I love live TV. I love the adrenaline rush of it. It's fun for me. And that's something that I probably wouldn't have gotten at other schools that I didn't have the hands-on experience with that I got at Full Sail, doing live productions every single day at that point by the end of my time at Full Sail, which I was doing basically every single day. I felt like I was a regular there in the studio, even finishing your class and then going in to help other students with their projects. And I think that was just that drive that I had to learn how to do that and make sure I was good at it so that when I got to a job like this, I was well prepared.
He's Carson Ferrell. He's very good at it. And now he's living that dream. So Carson, what is it like living the dream now?
It's been a roller coaster, honestly. Moving up here in January of 2020 and then having COVID just shut the sports world down. I mean, it left me in doubt about my career and like if things were going to work out. And, between moving into different places and bouncing around and having to take time off and, make time for life, I really every now and then I have to stop and smell the roses and realize that I am working at ESPN, and it is awesome. Like, I'm working on these shows that I watched as a kid and watched growing up to, making them happen and making them for, maybe some other kid out there who wants to do this job and making it possible. And just to see what goes into making those shows that I watched growing up, it's a surreal experience sometimes. And I always tell myself, no matter how bad the day gets, I could have the worst day possible. I'm working at ESPN. I'm not working at a dive bar in Winter Haven, Florida. With all the love I still have for that place, I can vividly remember every now and then I'd come out at the bar, I'd look over at the TV, and I'd watch ESPN for 30 minutes, and I'd get in trouble for sitting there watching TV. And now that same bar is showing ESPN productions, and they're putting what I work on TV. And that to me is just an awesome, surreal experience.
That's such a cool story. I love hearing that. And you mentioned some of these moments just standing out to you and being in your head. What was your day like when you got the call, knowing that you officially had the job?
I was in class, which was awesome because once again, at a class with Jeff Schetzel, he recorded me getting the phone call. And it was a 2-hour-long class. I think I got that phone call within the first 30 minutes. And I probably should have told him, like, hey, can we do this like tomorrow? I just can't focus today. Like, I'm numb. Like, I was just elated. I sat there through the rest of the class, and then I immediately got out and called my mom. And it was just an awesome experience to be able to share with her, share with my brother, who is a huge part of my life. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned him yet. Just telling my whole family about this stuff. And that was an awesome experience. It happened on Halloween. So we went to a Halloween party that night. I'm just the entire time, I'm just levitating right now. Like, life just feels like so surreal. And I got the call on Halloween, and I still have 2 months left at Full Sail. And now I have to focus up and get through school and make sure I graduate and get this done so I can go live my dream up here at ESPN.
Well, to your credit, and I can only speak for my class, you did everything you needed to do. You met your deadlines, you got your work done. I'm sure your mind was in other places sometimes, but you still finished things at a high level for us. And that surreal feeling you speak of, I've heard it a lot from ESPN employees that everybody has their kind of welcome to ESPN moment. What was yours?
ESPN did a lot of college basketball. I don't know much about college basketball. Well, I didn't at the time. I do now. And that was because I went into my first shift having to do a ESPN Super Tuesday college basketball show. And we're running the production on ESPN 1 and ESPN 2 out of one control room, which means our halftime show was a quick turnaround. And me not knowing anything about the sport, having to go in and cut 3 highlights that are going to turn around and re-air on 2 different networks in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes. It all happened so fast. I got it done. I didn't make any mistakes. And then the next thing I know, it was 1 a.m. and I had been working all night just making sure I got that stuff done. That was a big one. And I guess the other one would be I was working on a college football shift, and I spelled somebody's name wrong, and the anchor read it wrong, and I got yelled at because I had a typo there. And we're the worldwide leader, and we get a lot of flack if somebody makes a mistake on air, and I felt kind of responsible for that mistake. So those were 2 big moments where, like, this is ESPN, this is Welcome to the Big Show, like, you need to get it together. But I got it together, and especially getting into graphics now, like, there's even more weight on my shoulders because the words that you're reading are words that I'm typing and putting on TV. So I better make sure I'm spelling things right now.
Well, we all know what people do, right? They take their screenshots of stuff and they post it all over social media. So, and you always get the joke, right? And it's the stupidest joke in the world. But anytime somebody sees that, somebody's getting fired over that one, right? So now that's you, right?
Yeah, I'm the one that's getting fired. So maybe, take it easy on me next time if you see something wrong. It was doing an NFL show one time, and this was the only time where I've gone on Twitter and checked, like, did anybody see that? People saw it. I put Devontae Adams' name for a different Packers player. I can't remember who it was, but it wasn't Devontae Adams. And part of it was on me because I just didn't watch the clip beforehand, and it was a SOT with 2 different players on it, and I had the 2 names in there, and I had them backwards. And it went on air live, and everybody saw it, and nobody in the control room said anything. You could hear a pin drop aside from, the director calling things out. And then I just went on Twitter in the commercial break and saw everything that happened. And that was a pretty downtrodden moment for me. But you learn from your mistakes.
Carson, I remember that day. I think I texted my button. I'm just kidding. I don't remember. But you learn fast, right? And I think that's the attention to detail that I pour on all of you guys. And you guys send me a post. I'm like, you spelled this guy's name wrong. You didn't capitalize this right. It's important. And especially you're finding that in your job now as a graphics producer. And by the way, congratulations on the promotion at the beginning of 2022. That's such an awesome step for you. You're one of our first graduates to take the next step. And certainly at a company like ESPN, just a very monumental thing. What exactly does a graphics producer do for those who don't know?
We are essentially in charge of most of the on-screen graphics that you see during our shows. I do studio graphics, so I'm doing shows like SportsCenter, Daily Wager, our gambling show, our NHL show, The Point. I worked on a couple NFL shows in the fall. And essentially, we work with our researchers who find a lot of our stats and info. They're the best. Honestly, they're so good at their job at finding those hidden little nuggets that everybody loves to see. And the producer job in us is to, like, sift through all of that information that we get and understand the storylines and be like, this is a big fact that this person should know. This is a stat that we should put on screen and show the world. We have our show meetings and, we talk to our producers and, like, hey, if we're going on for, a 5-minute block here about the Avalanche scoring, we should have the numbers to back that up and have a full screen for it. So I found this info. Let's use that. And we work with the research to make, the full screen graphics or the little topic bars. Also working with talent, like I said, to find the information to back up what they're saying and to support their info to, make it look like we know what we're talking about at the end of the day.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What's the process that goes into deciding what show you work on? There's so many shows at ESPN, and obviously you're a hockey guy, so that seems like a natural fit that you work with a hockey show. But how does that all work in terms of you deciding what you want to do and them deciding what's best for the company?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it's business need. And when I first got into this graphics group, felt like I was kind of put on a small project, and it was, to get my feet in the water. And it was on Sports Nation, which we're no longer doing. But then it felt like I kind of caught on pretty fast. I told them what I like. I'm like, if I like hockey, I'm really good. I know a lot about it. And it seemed like a natural fit because they tested me on the hockey show one time. Again, one of those weird twists of fates. I was just supposed to train on it. And the guy who was supposed to train me had an emergency issue where he had to go work on another show. So they just kind of told me to go crazy and good luck. So I kind of just got thrown in the deep end there, but it worked out because I know hockey. The only thing that was different was just learning the different graphics packages, which we have a billion of them, and I just had to learn the NHL look. But aside from that, it was just felt like a natural fit. And now here I am working on hockey almost every day of the week, save for a couple different shows. Obviously, SportsCenter is our flagship show, so you train in all the different sports centers, and we need people that can fill those roles at any given moment because it's just such a big show and there's so many different sports centers. And that's what I was doing today with my nice 3 a.m. in time. So it's just a matter of like interests. I told them that I'm into sports betting, so I got put on Daily Wager, which is one of our harder shows because that show is literally like being a degenerate gambler where you are constantly looking at the Vegas lines and updating the graphics to reflect those ever-changing lines. And to me, it was just a natural fit because I'm usually looking at the lines and seeing what's changing and making sure I update stuff. And it worked out pretty well. I did that on Monday, and it was an awesome experience because felt like I was getting paid to show sports gambling info. It was awesome.
What I'm hearing from you is a lot of teamwork in some of these situations. What is the importance of the team working like a well-oiled machine when so much is at stake with a company that gets the eyeballs that ESPN has?
Yeah, I would say like 90% of our issues that you have that you may see on screen are just an issue of like lack of communication or somebody just not getting the info in that they needed. A save for a spelling error that I made because I didn't use spell check one time. That seems to be a lot of the issue where if something goes wrong, it's because we weren't working together as a team. And again, that goes back to what I learned at Full Sail was communication and teamwork and learning things that you need to know going into production. And that's why it is a production. It's such a big planned thing and that you're producing just to make this hour-long show or this 30-minute show. And it's, everything from the ground up, from the PAs cutting the video, making sure that we're cutting the right video and getting everything in, to demonstrating who's in the video and making sure that we're naming them right and getting that right info on screen, to the directors and the ADs, calling out cues and making sure we're not freezing things on camera. I mean, it's everything. It's truly, I've told my mom before because she's always, as a mom will, asking what it is that I do. And she'll ask me a million questions when she's watching my show. I really wish I could take somebody into a control room that's never been into one and just hear everything that's going on. It's almost like you're schizophrenic with all the voices that you're hearing in your headset and just all the little things that are playing into just getting this one thing that we have on screen. It truly amazes me sometimes that I'm able to kind of zone into it and make this work.
How do you get used to that?
It's hard. That goes back to my bass playing days of being in those high pressure situations and like, while you have a lot of people around you, and I never played a big show, but I would play it at bars with a bunch of drunk people and making sure that I'm focused on what I need to do, which is hitting my rhythm and playing my notes right. To now I'm making sure that I'm getting my graphics in there. We're doing a live show and we have an interview with, whoever it is that we're going to have a live interview with that's going to hit in about a minute and a half. I got to make sure that I know who that player is, have some kind of stat line for him, and I'm able to type that out and get it on screen within that time crunch. And that goes back to the deadlines. And just between that and having my focus while everything else is going on, it's hard to explain, really. It's just experience, really. Your first time in the control room is a surreal experience, but once you get to do it, like you learn how to zone in and tune other things out and listen to what you need to listen to.
We're chatting with Carson Ferrell, ESPN's Carson Ferrell, who's in his first year as a graphics producer at the Worldwide Leader, but he spent 2 years before that as a production assistant. Carson, how did those 2 years prepare you for what you're doing now?
You're going to make me bring up the twist of fate again, and that was COVID. My production that I was working on is called Wraps, which we would do the halftime shows and the intermission reports, and do the fill shows in between games, pregame and postgame and all that stuff. And when COVID happened, the person who was doing graphics for that group left. So there was a spot that needed to be filled. And I kind of felt for me like that was a good way to get in. I want to produce. That was a good way to get into producing. And instead of just, sifting through video and cutting video and logging video, this was something that I could actually like really enjoy doing. Like I'm a stats nerd. I'm like a nerd with that kind of stuff. And I felt like it would be cool to like work with graphics and put those stats on screen. So I would say once we finally came back from COVID, it was June of 2020 when we first got baseball back. And being a big baseball fan that I was, it was kind of a natural fit to do graphics for baseball reps. And I kind of just rode with it ever since. I was good at it. When it came time to move to a new assignment at the end of that year, I told my higher ups, like, I really like graphics. Can I get moved to a role where I'm doing more graphics? And so I got moved to the International Sports Center, which was a whole new world. I didn't know anything about international sports, but I learned on the fly, and I got to keep working with graphics and, doing what I like to do. So that's why I was happy with it. And then it came back around that I was going back into college football for that fall football season in 2021. And I kind of just stuck with it. I was good at it. I got asked to do bigger assignments, doing fantasy football, NFL shows that people who were actual graphics producers would normally do, but, they were going on vacation and they needed someone to fill in. And I got to do it. I did a full season in an NFL show that a GP would normally do. So I must have been pretty good at my job considering I was getting asked to do these things. So just that natural fit that I had from that first, month back from COVID just snowballed into where I am now.
Finding opportunities, taking advantage of them. That's what Carson Ferrell does. And I assume now, I'm sure your friends ask you, this is probably the top thing they ask you all the time, is about who did you see at ESPN today? Who are the celebrities you've met? So what encounters have you had of note in terms of meeting, whether they're athletes or other celebrity?
My third day working here, I met Stephen A. Smith, and not from like a formal meeting. I was walking out of a bathroom and he was walking by it, and I basically almost winged him with the door. And then I noticed who it was, and I'm like, that's the most expensive man in our company. I'm just going to walk away. So that was an interesting experience. A really cool one was I got to meet Mark Messier on our NHL productions. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. Barry Melrose is another one. Sam Acho actually recently started with us for last year's
former Bears
season.
Linebacker Sam Acho.
Yes. Started with us last football season. Didn't really grasp how like my job worked. So we were doing a Zoom call for our pre-show meeting, and he was trying to get his point across about a team that he thought was a playoff contender. And so I asked him in the call, I was like, what's your point that you're going to demonstrate here so I can get it on a graphic? Or no, he was saying there's a sleepier team that he didn't want to tell in the meeting, but he was going to tell on camera. And that's when I said, can you please tell me who it is so I can actually have a graphic for you? And he must have assumed that I was a researcher as well, because then he was asking me like, hey, what's the Jets stat for like downfield pass plays on 3rd and 10? I'm like, that's not my job. You should probably ask your researcher for this. And he was doing it in the middle of our show while we were in commercial break. But he was super nice about it. That's one thing that I've learned from working here is we've all come from these long journeys to get here. And it seems like most of the people who you see on camera every day in these big spots, they're people just like us. And, they're usually always very down to earth.
It's also amazing how many of these stories involve going in and out of the bathroom. Matt Berry from ESPN was on campus a few weeks ago, and he said, I think Jerry Rice was the guy he ran into in the bathroom. That was his first big moment of something. So it's kind of crazy how that works, right?
That's the one that you definitely can't forget. Haven't met anybody in the bathroom yet. I'm going to try and avoid doing that if possible. That's a weird one. That's an awkward interaction.
Definitely. All right. One more question about your job now before we get toward the finish line here. What's the most surprising thing about working there that maybe you didn't expect going into being at ESPN?
That's a tough one. Because I was pretty well prepared for coming here. I would say just how different things change while working here. I really wasn't expecting us to get the NHL package and to our MLB contract to change. And all of that happens with all those higher ups. And then it just kind of drops on employees like a bomb. And like all of a sudden we are working to make these things happen. I mean, we got the NHL package during last year's 2021 playoffs, which was a later playoffs because the season started later. And the fact that we got that package and then maybe 5 months later, less than, I don't know the exact number, we have a full studio built for that, a full graphics package, and like we're ready to roll. Like we are now putting the NHL live on TV. And it's just how fast it works. I mean, ESPN's a massive company, but like looking at how quickly they're able to make things happen and like the entity that we are, it's just sometimes you just don't expect it. Like you think they have all these hurdles to jump, but ESPN is just really good at what they do.
And there are some benefits to working at a big company that go beyond that too. And one of them is potential for upward mobility with so much going on there. So I ask you, what are your future dreams within this business?
I mean, I've always said I wanted to be a producer. I want to produce a show. But whatever that show may be.
4, 3, 2, 1. Live. Good night. And
I really can't say. I've always thought it'd be really cool to produce a big production like College Game Day, which seems to be like our production that is most watched, that everybody tunes into. Producing Sports Center would be an awesome dream of mine, but also producing live games, which I haven't really got the option to do and to work on. And I don't know if I ever will. I'm 26 years old. I've got a lot ahead of me, but the fact that I am where I am at 26 years old and I can still kind of look to the future and see what other options there are for me. I don't know if I'm ever going to, change my pathway, but I would like to go home one day, go back to Tampa and maybe, produce games for the Lightning or for the Rays if they're still there, hopefully. And just, to work on those productions that like I grew up locally watching and to, be around my people down there in Florida and have my friends and family like attend events that I'm producing. That would be a pretty cool thing to experience. But I don't know. The door's wide open. I'm young. I got the whole world ahead of me still, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes.
It's really crazy how quick things change, right? And it's even within a week of when our graduates leave, right? Like, so we've had some people graduate recently that have had jobs coming out, much like you did. And then they'll come back like the next week after they graduate to come in and see the class, which is fun. And it's almost like a big change just in that week. Like, wow, now you're a graduate, you're getting ready for your first job. And here you are, not even 3 years in at ESPN. And now you've got the whole world ahead of you. You're 26 years old, right? It's such a cool thing. And you talk about your long-term goals. We spoke earlier about being a production assistant, how that helped you as a graphics producer. How is what you're doing now going to help you be a full show producer?
The fact that I'm kind of working hand in hand with the producers to, build the rundown and to get the info in that we need for the show. I'm getting to see like what goes into their mindset of building a show. And there's a formula for it, but sometimes, the formula changes and, maybe we don't want to talk so much about tonight's upcoming games because last night's games were such a big deal. It really just depends on like reading the situation and like getting a feel for what you want to do. And another thing I've learned here is that different producers produce in different ways. When I was doing raps, we had 4 or 5 different producers and none of them were the same when it came to working on those things. So I guess my biggest thing is, trying to get a formulaic plan and making sure that it's easy and I'm communicating with these PAs and, graphics producers that I would be working with to make sure that we're all on the same page and make sure that things go right. And just having the experience that I had as a PA to now as a GP, I'm kind of seeing the things that are needed to make a good producer. And I think that's going to help me a lot down the road. I don't know if I'll be producing, in 10 years from now, but I may still be a graphics producer at the time. That's okay with me because I like my job and what I do. But it's definitely like a learning experience for me still. I don't ever want to stop learning, even though I got a promotion to the position. I would still like to keep taking things in and see what works to make a good production to eventually get to that point.
Learning is a lifelong process, and those who continue to strive for it do great things. You're already doing great things, and we're really proud of you, Carson. And that brings us to the final segment of the show, which I call the dream sequence. I'm going to give you a rapid fire, 7 things, dream this, dream that, and you just kind of got to blurt out whatever's on your mind at the time. So I've got 7 scenarios. You ready for it?
Yep. I know I said no vulgarity here, but I'll make sure I try not to bleed
no
vulgarity that out.
Yeah, I mean, I can edit, but we hopefully won't have to do that. All right. Dream concert lineup, a big event. You're a big music guy. So you can go to an event and multiple bands play. Who's your lineup?
Oh, somebody's going to be like, oh, this guy's such a hipster naming all these old bands, but whatever, man. I grew up on classic rock and heavy metal. Iron Maiden is the headliner for sure. Even though I'd also say Black Sabbath, they would probably headline over Iron Maiden just because it's Ozzy and, Pantera and Metallica. Those are 4 of my biggest bands, my favorites.
I like it. And you're a big Indianapolis Colts fan. You've seen a number of quarterbacks come and go since Andrew Luck. But if you had to pick now, who's your dream quarterback to lead them over the top?
25-year-old Andrew Luck.
Bring him back. Bring him back. He's still got game left.
Get a time machine or something.
How old is he now?
I think he's like 30, 31.
Man, he's still got it if he wants. I don't think he's coming back, but he still could if he would. And we'll see how Matt Ryan does. I think he'll be an upgrade for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, dream celebrity to bump into in Bristol. Not in the bathroom though.
Does it have to be an athlete or just
anybody?
Oh, Steven Stamkos.
Oh.
I try not to overthink it.
I can find him for you right now. He's not too far from him. My buddy ran into him at the beach with his dog, and they had a nice conversation the other day.
See, these are the connections that we're supposed to be making. I talked about making connections. This is one that you're going to need to make.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you where if you want to ever see John Cooper, I can tell you everywhere to go see him because it feels like anytime I go out, I see John Cooper. So
see, there we go.
definitely go to the dive bars and hat tricks and anywhere around the arena. Really,
right up my alley.
You're going to be good. All right. You mentioned working at the Mellow Mushroom. Dream Mellow Mushroom pizza named after you, the Carson Ferrell, whatever, deluxe. What's on it?
Oh, I'm going to, as far as name goes, because my nickname for the longest time was the Mighty Miller Man, because I'm a Miller Lite enthusiast. So we'll go with that. But I don't think Miller Lite would be very good on a pizza.
No. So if we're going to go, Carson, to be honest with you, wouldn't be good with anything, but I know you love it, so I'll hold that back.
So let's go with the Florida man vibe here. I'm big fan of a pub sub, a buffalo chicken sandwich public sub. So let's go with a buffalo sauce base, cheese, breaded chicken, lettuce, tomatoes.
When you said Florida man, I thought we were gonna have like alligator and like all the wild Everglades.
That wouldn't be a bad option. Wow,
Yeah.
that would actually be pretty good. Alligator pizza. All right, we're writing that one down. Right, I'm gonna pitch that idea.
You can add that to everything else if you think it sounds.
I'll pitch that idea.
All right, I know you're a Rays fan now. Why, by the way? Why are you a Rays fan now?
I explained it. I mean, I love Cleveland. I grew up an Indians fan. Once they left Winter Haven, I was like, it's still the team I grew up with. They're still the Cleveland Indians. It's my favorite baseball team. I'll always love them. And they changed the name, which it needed to happen. I completely understand why. And once they changed the name, it was just like, it just doesn't feel like the same team I grew up with anymore. I don't really have that same connection to the baseball team.
Okay, so we're gonna bring you back. Dream Indians outfielder. Any three outfielders who've ever played for the Indians? Who you got?
Oh, I'm gonna go with a weird choice here. Lonnie Chisenhall is one of them. Wow. Are we going former Indians players or any outfielder?
I want it to be a former Indians or current Indians player or Guardian, I guess.
I always loved Lonnie Chisenhall, so I would actually go with him. You're catching me here with my lack of knowledge showing. He was right fielder in the 96 team.
Manny Ramirez?
Yes, Manny Ramirez. And then left field, let's go Michael Brantley.
That's pretty good. Other than Chisenhall, that's pretty good.
He was just a weird fan favorite.
Give me Kenny Lofton and
Kenny Lofton, yeah. I don't know. You said I had to blurt out an answer, and for some reation, the first outfielder that came into my head was Lonnie Chisenhall.
Former third baseman. No, it's good. You're good, man. All right. Kind of with that same theme, dream lightning line. Three guys, offensive player.
All right. Center, former Lightning players or current Lightning players?
Former, current, yeah.
Center is going to be Steven Stamkos. Right wing, Marty St. Louis. Left wing. Okay, let's switch. Stamkos, left wing. Braden Point, center. Marty St. Louis, right wing.
Very fair. I'm surprised you didn't say Kucherov because I see all these pictures you post of you looking like Kucherov, which I think are funny.
Yeah, I do love Kucherov, but I don't know. Braden Point, man. That's still clutch in the playoffs.
All right, final one. As a Winter Haven born and raised man, dream spring training ballpark. What would the amenities be at a spring training ballpark besides the Miller Lite Tower?
Okay. All right. This is a good one because we lost our spring training complex. Let's build it back. The Rays should play there, obviously. So that's a good fit. Get them. They're local. Bring Polk County fans and migrate them over to Tampa a little bit during the season. Somewhere sports bar and grill. Let's get their wings there. That's our main concession. They have some of the best wings. If you go to Winter Haven, I suggest you go there and try their wings. They are some of the best I've ever had in my life, which that's saying a lot because I love wings. Our drafts, we got to go with Miller Lite, obviously. But let's mix it in. Let's go Big Storm Brewing for a little local IPA. Some Cigar City, obviously. And then, mix in the Winter Haven favorites of Anheuser-Busch products, which seem to be taking over every Winter Haven bar at this point.
Sounds like a plan. I never knew that you went beyond Miller Lite. It's cool to know that you have that taste. For
yeah, I shake it up every now and then, Rishi. Okay, sometimes I live in New England now. Sometimes I like a nice Sam Adams.
Good for you. I tell you what, he's growing up more every day. I'm really proud of Carson for numerous reasons, but mostly for what a good person he is, in addition to the success he's had in this industry. Carson, any final advice you want to leave with our students?
No matter how bad the days get, like I said, this field is awesome to work in. And I would say keep striving. Don't ever settle for, going back to whatever job it is that you had before. You're there for a reason. You're putting a lot of investment into it. Take advantage of the resources that you have there at Full Sail and go the extra mile to try and do the productions. You go to the Rollins games. If you guys still do those, I hope you do, because they're an awesome experience. Yeah, they're really an awesome experience. Take advantage of everything that you have there, but also don't forget to stop and enjoy the moment and make those lifelong friends that I did.
Great advice for life in addition to this business. We want to thank Carson Ferrell for joining us. This is episode number 10. What a great guy to have in for the 10th episode. And as I said, I dressed down for him. I'm glad I did. And he has been a great ambassador for our program over at ESPN, and hope he has many promotions to come. We'll have another guest for you here on the Livin The Dream podcast very soon, number 11. But for now, the rest of you, keep on living the dream.